Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. We take you inside a police operation in Prince George amid concerns that a safe supply of drugs is being diverted. Plus,
without that snowpack, we're going to be dependent on periodic rain throughout the summer.
BC hits a record low spring snowpack. The big worries as our wildfire season heats up. And
we've had people banging on school windows in British Columbia.
New rules around schools. The province says it's meant to protect children in the face of anti-SOGI protests.
The issue is around parental rights.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. The issue of the diversion of what's called a safe supply of drugs has become a hot political topic here in BC and across the country. Last month, Prince George RCMP said they'd seized a significant amount of safe supply, but later clarified it didn't make up a lot of their drug seizures. Still, as Jason Proctor explains, new documents paint a picture of the trade of legitimate drugs for illicit supply in that city and shows just how those exchanges went down.
We wanted to get an idea of, well, what actually is going on here, particularly in Prince George. And so I've obtained a search warrant attached to one of the latest investigations that Prince George RCMP have been speaking about, in fact, just this week. And it talks about a 10-day surveillance operation that RCMP in Prince George set up on a suspect who was seen outside of a pharmacy every morning, basically standing there trading illicit drugs, which she had, to give people coming out of the pharmacy in exchange for their prescription safe supply drugs. Now, according to this warrant, RCMP spoke to the pharmacy manager who said he's seen a lot of this since the safe supply program started up, and that it's only gotten worse in the last year. He says he's been told that people could get as much as $20 a pill for the hydromorphone that they're prescribed, which, you know, when you think about it, you're getting about 28 pills possibly a day. That is a lot of money that is out there in regards to this. So as part of this surveillance operation, police set up a team outside the woman's house, and they set up another team outside the pharmacy, and every day they watched as people lined up at the beginning of the day to get into the pharmacy, get their safe supply prescriptions, and then come out, and then one after another, they claim they watched them make these kind of hand-to-hand transactions off to this woman who, again, was giving them illicit drugs in exchange, like fentanyl, heroin, that kind of thing, in exchange for their safe supply drugs. They claim to have watched a total of 77 hand-to-hand transactions and another 7 short-duration transactions where they saw vehicles come up to her house. This includes people with Manitoba plates, Alberta plates, minivan, Mercedes, you name it, and make these sort of slightly longer duration trades, what they say is basically drug trafficking, but involving safe supply drugs. Now, they've arrested the woman, but she's been released. There's no charges at this point, and so we are not naming her. But it all goes to the questions around the safe supply program, and again, police have said, you know, this is not the bulk of what we're seeing in terms of drug trafficking. So we'll see where this goes in the future and whether charges will come. That's probably expected. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC has hit yet another worrying milestone. The province has recorded its lowest spring snowpack in more than half a century. And as Michelle Morton explains, that has sparked major fears about drought and wildfires.
Across the board, with areas in the Upper Fraser, the Nechako, the Bridge region, the Caribou Mountains, the North and South Thompson, the Upper Columbia, the West Kootenay, Okanagan, Peace, the Skeena, Nass, and Liard, all having at least one station at record low, just really shows how broad and widespread this low snow year is.
As of April 1st, the provincial snowpack is at 63% of normal, 25% lower than last year, and the lowest since records began in 1970.
Without that snowpack, we're going to be dependent on periodic rain throughout the summer to both saturate the ground and to keep our forests both vitalized and to keep the fire danger low, but also to maintain this flow in the streams and the rivers.
The report finds only Vancouver Island saw a normal amount of precipitation. Daniels warns the El Nino winter kicked off in early spring, setting us up for a long, dry wildfire season.
And we know that we're in a multi-year drought. So these are places already that had low precipitation last summer. We had big fires as a result last summer. And we went right through the fall with low rainfall, not enough snow through the winter.
The report comes just as Metro Vancouver announces its seasonal watering restrictions. Starting May 1st, residents and businesses can only water lawns once a week. The River Forecast Center says the snowpack could increase into May with more cold, wet weather, and it notes the low snowpack could have one benefit.
The lower risk for flooding this year in the interior. Areas that have been hard hit by flooding, I'm thinking about Cache Creek or Grand Forks, they hopefully will breathe a sigh of relief that the likelihood of flooding this year is pretty low.
But he warns sudden or extreme rain could still cause flooding. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Let's bring in our science and climate specialist, Darius Mahdavi, with these concerning numbers and warnings.
Yes, so again, throughout the winter, we've been tracking this, right, Dan? And it's been pretty grim throughout. But since March 1st, when we saw a little bit of improvement, it seems things have gotten worse again, which is what we were expecting. We talked about the automated snow station data earlier, and this is really just not surprising, but it is unfortunate. So 37% below normal across the province. On the south coast in Vancouver Island, about half the snow we usually have this time of year, and it's not looking great for the northeast either, which is where we could really use some rainfall considering the prevailing drought conditions and the ongoing overwintering fires that we have in that area. So that being said, as we heard, some consistent rainfall, just some rain every 3 to 5 days through the summer could fix everything. But are we going to get that remains to be seen. It is trending towards a warm and dry start to the season, but what we see in the summer is hard to say at this point. Now, again, all the snow stations, all the automated snow stations, pretty much below average, very, very few even near normal, and almost half of them at a record low level. I believe it's 28 stations out of the 200 or so that are now at record low levels for April 1st. Now, with that being said, some precipitation still on the way. We're starting to see that next system slowly build in. A little bit of snow for the mountains because those freezing levels are dropping as that colder air moves in. So for Vancouver tomorrow, expect some showers at the by sea level and some flurries for the local mountains.
Okay, we'll check in later. Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
The BC government is moving to ban protests and disruptions outside schools. It's aimed at addressing protests against the province's program around sexual orientation and gender identity. More now from Mira Baines.
Legislation was introduced to create a bubble zone to prevent protests in front of schools or interfere with school activities, including extracurricular activities. It's aimed at addressing anti-SOGI protests. BC's premier says parents shouldn't have to be concerned about protests at their children's school.
It never crossed my mind to be worried that a grown adult would be waiting on the school perimeter to yell at my child about pornographic books, about puberty blockers.
Premier David Eby says scaring kids or disrupting school activities will soon be illegal.
The Ministry of Education has documented 18 major disruptions at BC schools since the start of the 2023-24 school years.
Some parents have opposed the use of teaching resource SOGI, short for sexual orientation and gender identity.
We've had people banging on school windows in British Columbia.
Under the proposed law, people found impeding access, harassing, or intimidating others within 20 meters of school grounds will be arrested or ticketed by police. BC Conservative leader John Rustad believes the SOGI guidelines should be scrapped.
The issue is around parental rights, parents being involved with their children's education. The issue is around information that's being provided within schools, which seems to be inappropriate in my opinion.
The province says the legislation is based on the same framework used to prevent anti-vaccine protests outside hospitals. There is a sunset clause to the legislation. It will be repealed in July of 2026. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
We're now hearing directly from the electric truck company, raising concerns about BC's Clean Energy Grants program. The Merit firm's CEO alleges accounting firm MNP acted as both grant writer and administrator. He told On the Coast host Gloria Makarenko on Tuesday that his company had applied for several grants but was never successful, and eventually brought his concerns to the provincial government.
When we raised the concern, it was actually, we went down to Victoria on a really cool, happy note. Like, I wasn't planning on kind of being a whistleblower or anything like that at the time. We went down there, and because we just got our license plate, so we built a couple of these diesel electric trucks. And when we went down there, it was to celebrate. We just got our license plate, VIN number. We passed all the government tests we need to pass. And we had built the first commercial semi-truck, I think, built in BC in over 30 years. So they were just like, hey, we want to celebrate this, come down. We met with them, and then they asked, we went up to some of the staff in Minister of Mine and Low Carbon Innovation, the one who go over the Commercial Vehicle Innovation Challenge. And they met with us and they said, hey, how's the government been helping you? Have you been getting any grants? And we said no. And they asked, what about this grant? And it was funny. The Commercial Vehicle Innovation Challenge grant was literally for people building electric trucks. We are the only company in BC manufacturing an electric truck. So they were quite shocked that we didn't get that one. And that's when I said, well, hey, it's because I think it's because we didn't sign up with this company. This company is the one administering the programs, and they're also wanting to write grants. And I don't know what programs and whatnot they're administering, and then they said they would look into it. That was about a month ago or so. And then the very next day, after they said that they were going to look into it, they announced that they're putting that company in charge of the whole economic assessment again and doing all of the future grant recommendations and funding recommendations going forward. So we're like, man, we brought up these concerns, and literally the next day you put that company in charge of everything. Come on, there's got to be a conflict of interest in there.
Since then, BC Energy Minister Josie Osborne has ordered the Auditor General to investigate MNP. She says her government was provided new information over the weekend about the company's involvement, though she hasn't shared many details. She spoke with Gloria Makarenko on Wednesday.
So it first came to light at the end of February. We're mid-April now, and you're saying something happened this past weekend. I'm just trying to understand the timeline here. I know that you declined to investigate MNP's involvement in the grant programs just last week, and supposedly this is after you've been looking into it since the end of February. But this week, you changed your stance on that. So what was it that changed your mind?
Yeah, all along, with all of the information that we've had, we've been making the best decisions that we can. And this new information that came to light, like I said, it really does raise serious questions. It's clearly been the subject of discussion in the House, and there have been videos released by the company, for example. There's a lot of confusing information out there. That's why it's so important to have the Auditor General undertake their review. That's why we've asked for that review. And further to that, we've asked the Comptroller General to also review, a different office that's inside government, responsible for overseeing the financial management and financial controls at the province, because we take this very seriously, and it needs to be fair. It needs to be done in the best public interest, and that's what British Columbians expect. We've heard British Columbians speak about this, and we know that this is the best way to go. It's moving forward with the Auditor General and having this independent review done. And we hope that those answers will come back to us quickly, because everybody wants them.
You can watch Gloria's full interview with Minister Osborne on our website, cbc.ca/BC. A Howsett First Nation has released some findings from Phase 1 of a search for missing children forced to attend 2 residential schools in its territory. There were no figures offered regarding the number of potential marked graves at the gathering, but the project team did reveal more details about reported deaths.
Between 1904 and 1940, 13 students died. 12 of them were sent home and they were sick, and the records show that they were sent home and they died at home.
The First Nation says field work and scanning during Phase 1 noted likely and potential unmarked graves on both former residential school sites, as well as the Ahousaht Cemetery, adding that clusters of, quote, unknown features in these areas merit further research. They're pressing the federal government as well as religious groups to provide ongoing resources and funding for the search, as well as mental health and cultural support for the Ahousaht people. So what happens next in Ahousaht and many other sites where ground radar work has taken place? It is complicated. The CBC's urban Indigenous reporter Wamy Hamilton shares his perspective on why it's a hard and necessary conversation.
Today, the Ahousaht on the west coast of Vancouver Island became the latest First Nation to publicly release the results of its ground-penetrating radar survey. The survey work was done in an effort to find children who the Ahousaht First Nation say went missing from 2 residential schools that operated there. It's important to point out that ground-penetrating radar doesn't find human remains. Instead, it finds disturbances in the soil that are inconsistent with the surrounding area, places where experts say there is the possibility of human remains. Ahousaht isn't the first Indigenous community to release ground-penetrating radar results. The 3rd anniversary of the GPR findings at Tequendama is coming up in May. Since then, several other BC First Nations, including the Sishant, Shishal, Williams Lake First Nation, have also released their findings. But no First Nations in BC have excavated for human remains yet. This is a difficult next step that awaits all of us, deciding whether or not to take it, and then the forensic identification of what could be children's remains. Nobody likes to think about this, let alone talk about it. This is precisely why this conversation needs to happen, and planning needs to start now. There are many cultural complexities to take into account. Communities have varied traditions about how they deal with death, and children who were taken to these schools came from First Nations around BC that had their own distinct protocols. The nations didn't invite these children to the schools, and the kids weren't guests there either. So who gets to decide what tradition is followed? Then, what would be the repatriation plan? What about communities that don't have the land or the money to make this happen? Or even students with no bloodline left, no living family? These are complicated questions that have no easy answers, only difficult choices that will take time to resolve. Speeding it up may complicate things. This is the first time our country has been through something like this. There's no playbook for this. There's no wise old man to guide us with his experience and wisdom. There's only us. Wamy Hamilton in Vancouver.
Coverage like this can be upsetting and invite painful memories or feelings. If you or someone you care about is looking for support, you can reach the National Residential School Crisis Line at 1-866-925-4419. It operates 24 hours a day and is available for survivors, intergenerational survivors, as well as their loved ones. Amazon workers at 2 distribution centers in Delta and New Westminster may soon be certified under the union Unifor. Unifor organizers have been meeting and getting cards signed since October. Their application is now with the BC Labour Relations Board, and a hearing has been set for next Tuesday. If the board finds that over 55% of workers have signed union cards, they will automatically be certified.
The bottom line is, Amazon workers understand that this is their moment and they're ready to seize it.
If less than 55% of employees have signed union cards, workers will be given the chance to vote to certify. For its part, Amazon says in a statement, the fact is Amazon already offers what many unions are requesting: safe and inclusive workplaces, competitive pay, health benefits on day one, and opportunities for career growth. Adding, we look forward to working with our employees to continue making Amazon a great place to work. Muslims in BC and across the world are marking the end of Ramadan with Eid al-Fitr. Our Michelle Morton stopped by BC Place Stadium, where the largest gathering in our province is held.
When we got here earlier, dozens of people were racing to get into the building, and now, as you can see, many people coming out of prayers, gathering together, taking pictures together. I'm being told from families they're driving in from all over the province, including Hope and Richmond, so a lot of excited people here today.
It means a lot. Like, it's a celebration after Ramadan and after like fasting for 30 days, so it's finally time to like eat again like during the day and enjoy being together.
And we are coming all the way from Hope to visit this event.
We're taking this opportunity to bring the community together, so we're happy to just kind of get together and lift spirits up and hopefully be there for each other.
Humanity, peace and prosperity, you know, that's all about. All about get together, pray for each other, help each other. That's all about Eid.
Now, I was told around the last count there's about 10,000 people inside. I was told by hosts out front here, and while there is a lot of excited energy, there is some somber tone as well, which the Premier actually addressed in a statement. David Eby wrote, in part, this year some will mark this important day in some somber tones as a reflection of grief over the devastation and tragic loss of life in the Middle East. These difficult days remind us that we are stronger because of the diversity of our communities and province.
Still ahead, Doris Madami is back to tell us how wildfire behavior is becoming more intense at night when firefighters used to get a break. Stick around. Thanks for joining our commercial-free live stream tonight. How long does it take you to solve a Rubiks Cube? Could you do it in under 3 minutes? That's what some people at a Charlottetown event tried to do. Have a look.
The yellow in the middle and these four on the outside, that's the first step to get the daisy. Yeah, I have tried to teach people, but I've tried to teach this fellow here. Like, they can solve it, but they can't remember. They could solve it if they copy what I'm doing.
So we are doing our first competition ever in PI, which is absolutely incredible. Very happy to be here. Today we're doing two events, which is the normal Rubiks Cube that everyone's used to, and the smaller 2x2. For a lot of competitors here, it's not about winning, it's more about trying to improve their own results, and so obviously they might be a little upset, but we definitely have more competitions coming, and hopefully that in future competitions they can do better and improve.
Competing against these young, talented cubers was something. I've been champion in my whole life for over 40 times, but it never felt so good. Never felt so good. Yeah, my record was 7 seconds when I was a national record holder in Bangladesh, but now it's not anymore. As I said, that it's after 7 years. So my goal was to go to the finals, but I got the bronze. Yeah, feels so good.
I competed in PEI for a Cuban competition.
How'd you do?
I got second place for podium on 2x2. It was 2.93 seconds for an average. I mean, I love it. I try to get better. My goal is to get as much podiums as I can. Solving your first Rubiks Cube is going to be the hardest bit, but once you do that, once you get over that, you pretty much are good.
8 months have passed since catastrophic wildfires tore through West Colona, wiping out hundreds of homes. For West Colona Fire Chief Jason Brolin, there are vital lessons to learn, especially in mitigation work to remove fire fuels in forested areas. CBC host Sarah Penton met up with Brolin in a regional park that was hit by the McDougall Creek fire last August.
It's encouraging that the regional district went to such effort to mitigate here, to remove fuel and to prepare for an event like what happened, because it means that this isn't a moonscape of black toothpicks. The work that was done here means that this park will bounce back and it will be made safe for the public again in the coming years, and they'll be able to come back in here and do that.
What's your hope that more of our forest and land around us can be like this area? I mean, you pointed out areas that have not been mitigated. How are you feeling when you look around those areas that haven't had this kind of work done?
Yeah, what happened to us here happened to us largely because of the weather, because we didn't get rain, because we had extreme winds that passed through when the temperatures were extremely high. We can't control the weather. The weather is changing and we're going to have to adapt to it, but what we can do is adapt the spaces that we use. We can fortify the spaces around our homes, for example, to give them a chance to survive fire when it does come, and to give firefighters the space to do their work, so that the fire isn't in the canopy of the trees when we get here, so it is on the ground when we have to fight it.
It must feel good to look up and still see green.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look down.
There are areas that are devastated in our community that don't look like this, but there are also spots that did come through the fire.
Yeah. How much would it cost if you had the purse strings? How much would it cost to do the kind of mitigation you think that would make a difference?
Yeah, I think it needs to be done on a very large scale. We could spend millions of dollars in the coming years doing mitigation. I think supporting people to do it on private land is an area that we don't have the ability to do now, aside from some very limited grants that we do offer to people to incentivize them. There's no shortage of spaces that need to be mitigated. It's just are people willing to do the work?
It's like you said millions of dollars, really. Millions of dollars out of a budget. Doesn't seem like that much money. Like, how much could the province be doing more to be mitigating our forests to make a difference?
When you look at it against the cost of fighting a wildfire like this, it really, even just a small percentage of that cost could go a long way to reducing the intensity of a fire or preventing it coming into a neighborhood and destroying homes, and that's the argument that we'll continue to make is looking at what end of the problem should we be spending the money on. Should we be spending it on fighting it when the fire is happening, or should we be spending it on preventing that fire from happening in the first place? And it's easy to say, but it's difficult when in reality now we're at a point because of a changing climate that we have to spend it on both.
And if ever there, like you said, if ever there was a time, it's now. And there would be an appetite now, because we're just coming on the other end of the worst fire season we've ever had. And yet, do you think enough is being done right now?
There's always more that can be done. Every load of cedar hedges that I see going to the landfill or the yard waste, I'm happy about. But you don't have to look very far to see, the same things being planted in a new neighborhood, for example. So we've got a lot of work to do.
West Colona Fire Chief Jason Brolin. Now, as we head into another summer with extreme drought conditions, wildfire fighters are gearing up for what is likely another busy season. But it's not just about the number of fires, it's when they burn. And a new study finds that task could get a lot more demanding at night. Science and climate specialist Darius Madavi is back with more. Darius, why is this study so significant?
I don't think it would be exaggerating to say that this paper really changes the way we think about fires. It shows that thanks to climate change and extreme drought, the active days, quiet nights model of fire activity is failing us. As more and more fires burn through the night, researchers were looking at the frequency of what we call overnight burning events, where a fire burns right through the night into the next day. Now, these are really challenging to fight, especially because they used to be so rare, so we often don't have the equipment needed. Generally, at night, temperature goes down, relative humidity goes up, which makes the fire go quiet. It can still burn, but slowly and without posing many problems. But that's changing. From 2017 to 2020, researchers found over 350 fires across the US and Canada that burned overnight, some of them through several nights, and most of them here on the West Coast. I spoke with wildfire expert Mike Flanagan, who explained the driving forces.
It's drier and drier. There's more fuel available to burn, which leads to a higher intensity fire. So building up that energy that kind of allows it, it's like a freight train. It's just, if it's going fast enough, it keeps on rolling even after you've stopped giving it the gas.
Flanagan also told me that when they started this research, he expected warm overnight temperatures to play the biggest role. But they're finding that drought is actually the major factor, is particularly bad news for those of us here on the drought-prone West Coast, which, in combination with massive wildfires, introduces all sorts of added risks.
Drought may be playing a role in these fire-generated thunderstorms, pyrocumulonimbus, pyro-CBs for short. These are erratic, dangerous events, and these are, often associated with fires that can burn through the night.
Darius, what does this mean for firefighting efforts?
Not all fires will result in overnight burning events, just like they don't now. They're still relatively uncommon in the grand scheme of things, considering how many fires we have. But as we heard from Flanagan, at least some level of forecasting is possible. But knowing what will happen is a far cry from preventing it. As we saw last year, firefighters are already stretched thin. And this isn't just one more added pressure. In many ways, it's a whole different ballgame.
Using aircraft, you have to be able to fly at night. You want night vision and, the specialized training and equipment that goes with that. Alberta does have a helicopter with night vision that can be used for nighttime operations. California does it, but most jurisdictions don't.
What does that mean for this season? Well, snowpack levels and the upcoming potentially warm and dry season mean that it could be difficult to see really any change in what we saw last year in terms of all these overnight burning events. But it shouldn't be a surprise that in a changing climate, on a changing planet, our fires are changing too. As Flanagan told me, we've seen more area burned in the last 7 years than the 58 years before that. And as last summer made abundantly clear, a fire that spreads overnight poses a particular danger to British Columbians, their homes, and the people protecting them. So it may not just be the way we think about fires that has to change, but how we fight them as well.
Darius Manavi, thanks very much. Prime Minister in the hot seat. Justin Trudeau testifies at the Foreign Interference Inquiry. What he says he knew about allegations of election meddling by China and what his government did to fight them. Next.
Andrew Norris was a 45-year-old Paradise resident with a young family. His son, Aaron, says he was also a respected community volunteer.
So a very involved community member. He knew a lot of people, and a lot of people knew him.
The family had a summer home in Carbonear, and they'd get there using the Veterans Memorial Highway, a 2-lane, 38.5-kilometer stretch used by 10,000 vehicles a day, according to the province. Last Father's Day, Andrew and his younger son were traveling that road when tragedy struck.
He was struck by another vehicle head-on at around 100 kilometers an hour. He was alive on impact. My brother broke his femur, and they were both taken to Carbonear Hospital. Unfortunately, on the way to the hospital, and at the hospital, he lost his battle. We're kind of trying to adjust.
Aaron credits his dad with veering away from the oncoming vehicle, saving his brother's life. Aaron says his brother has since recovered. According to the RCMP, the other car, which was speeding, traveled over the center line and hit Andrew's van head-on. The other driver, a 29-year-old man, died at the scene. The Veterans Memorial Highway connects communities in Conception Bay North with the Trans-Canada Highway, but over the years, it's garnered a deadly reputation. The mayor of one of those communities wants to see changes.
We have to do something and have it analysed and look at it again to make sure that maybe it's something we can do that would make it safer. A divided highway would certainly, a twin highway would be certainly a good solution. It costs money, yes, but it would save lives.
Aaron says he's asked Transportation and Infrastructure Minister John Abbott to look into twinning the road. In a statement, a spokesperson said the province is always looking at potential improvements. Beginning in 2018, the province added passing lanes in 4 locations, as well as new ramps on an interchange near Carbonear. According to the province, there were more than 400 collisions on the highway from 2012 to 2022. The RCMP say from 2018 to now, there were 11 fatal collisions, resulting in 12 deaths. But they say the problem isn't the road, it's the drivers.
Those that are using the highway, as a highway to travel from point A to point B at highway speeds, please maintain that speed limit. Have patience. Don't take increased risks. Certainly don't drive impaired, and always wear your seatbelt, whether you're driving within a community or on the highway.
Aaron, who's 20 now, says he misses talking with his dad.
Me and my dad were very close. We often talked a lot about sports, school, just everything really. He was one of my best friends. I talked to him every night when I got home. Having that person to not talk to anymore in your life, it's like a big void that really just can't be filled.
Meanwhile, Aaron worries about more crashes on the Veterans Memorial Highway. Just 3 weeks ago, there was another head-on collision on the highway. One driver died at the scene, the other sustained serious injuries. The RCMP is investigating. Daryl Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
The Prime Minister was under oath today, revealing some of what he knew and when about attempts by foreign actors to interfere in Canadian elections. Ashley Burke takes us through Justin Trudeau's testimony at the public inquiry into foreign meddling.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Sworn in and ready to tell his side of the story.
There are real concerns and feelings involved.
The Prime Minister's testimony, a defense of himself, his officials, and how intelligence agencies handled foreign meddling in the past 2 elections.
Every briefing I've ever got from all my intelligence and security experts is that those elections were indeed free and fair.
Justin Trudeau laid out the measures he says his government put in place to protect Canadian elections from foreign actors.
We started from a standing start. We created the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. We created NSIRA. We moved forward with the Rapid Response Mechanism, and we've continued to do more.
But the inquiry also heard about gaps in what intelligence was and wasn't shared with him.
First of all, these are briefing notes that I never saw.
The government declassified secret documents for the public to see for the first time. But Trudeau said some of that intelligence didn't match what he was told during briefings.
So this reporting of an expressed preference by certain PRSE officials for a Liberal minority, was that something of which you were aware at the time?
No.
The commissioner also heard there were gaps in what Trudeau could do. In one case, CSIS warned his party of irregularities in the nomination of Han Dong as a Liberal candidate in 2019.
I asked the extent to which they were certain that it happened, the extent to which they were certain that China was indeed behind the mobilizing of the bus or buses. And I also asked whether or not CSIS had information that Han Dong knew about this. And the answers were not clear from CSIS at that point.
He said CSIS also warned the information must remain a secret.
This was secret information that we could not share.
Trudeau's high-profile testimony was supposed to be the last at this stage of the inquiry, but in a rare move, the commissioner agreed to call back the head of Canada's spy agency to clear up some contradictions that the intelligence agency said in a key document and what the Prime Minister says he was told. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Bank of Canada has decided to hold its trend-setting interest rate at 5% for the 6th time in a row. Governor Tiff Macklem says inflation and the economy are heading in the right direction, and he continues to hold out the possibility that rate cuts are coming.
Now, I realize that what most Canadians want to know is when are we going to lower our policy rate? What do we need to see to be convinced to cut? The short answer is we are seeing what we need to see, but we need to see it for longer to be confident that the progress towards price stability will be sustained.
Most analysts expect to see a cut by the bank in June. Inflation is now at 2.8% and is being held there by high housing costs and rising gasoline prices. U.S. President Joe Biden has leveled more criticism at Israel's prime minister. In a television interview, he calls Benjamin Netanyahu's approach to Gaza a mistake and is wanting an immediate ceasefire and the free flow of aid.
Allow for the next 6-8 weeks total access to all food and medicine going into the country. I've spoken with everyone from the Saudis to the Jordanians to the Egyptians. They're prepared to move in. They're prepared to move this food in. And I think there's no excuse to not provide for the medical and the food needs of those people. They should be done now.
Biden also calls the deadly airstrike on World Central Kitchen aid workers outrageous. He's been an outspoken supporter of Israel's war against Hamas, but in recent weeks, his administration has taken a tougher stance. Fresh concerns about the safety of Boeing aircraft thanks to a whistleblower. That story when we return.
From the outside, it looks like any other apartment building. But this 15-story high-rise is unique. It's not a dorm, it's not even on a university campus, but it's only for university students and their families. And the rent here is about 30% below average.
Our one-bedrooms are going up in June to $930, and our two-bedrooms are $1,175. I hesitate to say that because I know the flood of calls we'll get, right? And so we've actually closed our wait list. We have about as many applicants currently on the wait list as we have units currently. So it will be years until we can really start accommodating new applicants again, but because of the price, right? And it includes all the utilities too. So it's really, really affordable.
A nonprofit student group built this in the 1960s. And now with a housing crisis hitting every corner of the province, they're looking to expand.
I think for us, it's like, if a community has students and young people in it that need housing, that's where we want to be.
The next step is to buy existing housing or build new housing to rent to students for cheap. Archibald says that could help all renters, not just students.
The ability to bring, more affordable, adequate housing to students frees up units outside of, the student space for other people. And in the long term, any kind of injection of non-market affordable housing brings down the average market rent, which is what every renter needs and wants that right now.
The crux is that it could take years for the goal to become a reality, and the demand for student housing is high right now. Students' unions are fielding questions about housing all the time.
We are hearing from students that they need help kind of navigating situations with their landlords, understanding tenants' rights. There are a lot of resources out there, but also this is not a system that was made for students. And so, when students, we're in a particularly vulnerable situation because we are trying to learn how to be adults.
Anderson says for some, the lack of affordable housing has become a barrier to getting an education.
We are seeing that a lot of students are going part-time because they can't afford to keep up with the price of education, with the price of groceries, with the price of rent.
Some institutions are trying to fix this problem, including King's, which is working on a plan to take down one of its old buildings and replace it with a new dorm. It's still in the design phase, and millions of dollars still need to be fundraised. So today's students are not likely to see it built, but the current push to improve student housing could open doors for the next class. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Halifax.
There are new concerns about the safety of Boeing airliners. A whistleblower claims there are construction flaws in the 777 and 787 passenger jets. It's the latest in a growing list of concerns about the company's planes. And as Cameron McIntosh tells us, it's the second time this year the head of Boeing is being called to appear in front of American lawmakers.
They're among the top-selling wide-bodied jets in the world. Boeing's 777 and 787 Dreamliner. Manufacturing processes for both now being investigated by the Federal Aviation Administration.
I am hopeful that the FAA will not allow this to go unanswered.
Boeing engineer Sam Salafor alleging the 777 could have damaged parts. That changes to manufacturing of 787s could leave fuselages with improperly closed gaps.
I literally saw people jumping on the pieces of the airplane to get them to align.
You certainly don't see that in Boeing's corporate videos. Boeing denies Salafor's allegations, along with allegations from his lawyer.
He was threatened with physical violence. He was threatened with termination.
Salafor worked in the same South Carolina plant as another whistleblower, John Barnett, who also raised concerns about the 787. He was found dead in his truck in March of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Boeing, meanwhile, is reeling from recent mid-flight scares. A 737-800 engine cover falling off just this week, a 757-200 suffering wing damage in February, and that 737 MAX 9 losing a door plug in January. The largest aircraft builder in the world, orders were up last month despite its troubles, which have slowed production schedules.
And it's probably going to take a long time for them to get out of this because, again, you have to change the culture. And they have to go back to a more safety-oriented culture.
Boeing's CEO has announced his retirement later this year. Salafor has been invited to testify in Washington next week.
I'm doing this not because I want Boeing to fail, but because I want it to succeed and prevent crashes from happening.
Although there is an investigation, neither of the planes have been grounded. Boeing insisting it always works with regulators. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Darius Madavi is back with our BC-wide weather forecast. But first, you have a wildfire forecast for Canada.
Yes, earlier today, the federal government had a briefing and released some information about what they're thinking is going to happen this wildfire season. So this is actually across Canada look. What we're looking at here is actually the last 12 months. So from March 2023 or April 2023 to March 2024, what the precipitation was looking like over that year-long period. And as you can see, really across the country, but especially here in Western Canada and in BC, we saw some incredibly low amounts of precipitation. So that was really what caused our wildfire season, or helped drive our wildfire season last year. Now, the outlook for this year is looking pretty similar, it seems, especially our starting conditions where we came into it in a drought situation. Precipitation forecasting, especially seasonally, is notoriously difficult. So we have really, it's not easy to say what's going to happen later in the summer. Before this spring, the start to spring, temperatures are trending hot, precipitation is trending low, and we are going to see that reduction in snowpack that we have really cause some issues, because we even if we had an average amount of precipitation, we're missing that added precipitation, that added soil moisture that would come from the snowpack. So really overall, the government is warning that, especially for Western Canada and some other places, it could be an early and strong start to the wildfire season. Now, that being said, there is some precipitation on the way across the province. We've seen a little bit start to make its way into some places already. You can see here on parts of the island and in central BC, a bit of that system making its way in. It already hit the north coast, the central coast, and the North Island, and is now continuing to work its way down. So that should reach us by tomorrow early morning. But as we look ahead to our precipitation forecast, you can see blanketing the island and then breaking in as just some really scattered flurries and showers later on Friday for parts of the interior. So looking like a couple of wet days ahead for many places, although here on the Lower Mainland and on the island, by Friday we should start to dry up and clear up into the later parts of the day. If you look at our temperatures, though, you can see that big drop coming tomorrow before temperatures start to recover as we get later into the week. Really, across the province, that's going to be the story as we get pretty dry as we head into the weekend for most places at least, although another system may come for the north and central coasts. In terms of conditions tomorrow, we do see that precipitation making its impact across the province, although really other than here on the coast, it's going to be fairly calm, even here, just some scattered showers really. And so a rainy day tomorrow then makes way for lots of sun on the way and temperatures that'll be warm, especially if you're further inland.
Okay, Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Coming up, we head to a bubble tea shop in Richmond to meet a special server who's not human. You'll want to see and hear this.
Drifting over to the 9 on the other side for a 25. Chances. Oh, and that's gone over to the 7 for a 24. Was that an opportunity wasted there from Virginia Chenier? It certainly does look like it, with my maths are right. Christine Essebeur has taken this one by 6 sets before the All-Canadian gold medal match sees Essebeur, the former Georgian, take gold in the Continental Olympic qualifier for the Americas. Virginie Chenier, her teammate, with silver.
Medalla de plata. Y representando a Canadá, Virginie Chenier.
It was an all-Canadian final. And she had a chance to win with her final arrow. She dropped it into the 7. Virginie Chenier from Canada, 29-year-old, collecting the silver medal. Her eyes, along with her teammates, will turn to qualification chances at the Pan American Championships coming right here in Medellin after this competition's concluded. Speaking of teammates, here is one of them, the champion of the Continental qualifier for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, Christine Essebeur. Former 4-time Olympian for Georgia, has got top spot.
More and more automated machines are popping up across several industries. Touchscreens and self-checkouts are already the norm, as we know. But how do you feel about being served by a robot?
A bubble tea shop in Richmond is showing off its new server named Toffee. Our Ali Pitarge went to Tea Industries and got a taste of its special boba.
Bubble tea shops are everywhere in the Lower Mainland.
You walk into a cafe or up to a kiosk in a mall, you usually see a long and comprehensive menu of bubble tea flavors and specialty drinks. And the people who work there tend to be polite and patient, given how customers can really take a while to decide what they want. But one bubble tea shop in Richmond is doing something different, something that may appeal better to introverts. You enter Tea Industries on number 3 Road, and you're greeted by a stretchy, robotic arm serving up drinks behind glass. I spoke to the robot's developers.
Hi, my name is Sam, the project manager of Tea Industries, and this is our robot, Toffee, and he is in charge of making drinks for today.
Sam, Toffee there can get quite busy, right?
Yeah.
So if I walk in here not wanting to talk to anybody, how do I order a bubble tea?
We have the option of a kiosk where it's humanless interaction. And once you select your drink, you can then further customize the ice level, syrup level, and even the option of adding pearls or not pearls. So this QR code would be then used to scan to activate the bay doors on the machine.
So can you describe what's happening right now?
Toffee has already started making the drinks after it has been communicated through the kiosk. So now it's currently pouring tea and weighing the amount of, if it's the right amount on the scale. They're adding the tea, which is the crucial ingredient.
Spinning around, mixing it up for me?
It's printing the label, and now it's going to proceed to the step where it performs to mix up the drink.
Oh, wow. Toffee's got some moves.
Yeah, and now that your drink is ready, the QR code is ready for scanning.
Toffee takes about 2 minutes to make your drink before a gate opens up and lets you grab your tea. Tea Industries are working to make it go faster and faster. That's a lot of work for one robot for now, but humans are also on site at the shop to assist. But I was especially curious about why Toffee came to exist.
My name is Michael Young. I'm from Master Robot. We're doing business as a tea industry.
Can you tell me why you decided to develop a robot that makes bubble tea?
Actually, it started probably almost 6 years ago, back at 2019, just before the pandemic. We already noticed that there was a big shortage of labor workers, not only in BC, but across Canada. On the financial side, it's a little bit over $1 million. 6 years of R&D development. We started back at 2019, reaching out to many of the overseas robot manufacturers, and then visiting them, and then we start developing the software, so the command, the features, so the robot can talk to other devices like the point of sale, the kiosk, digital menu, and mobile app.
Toffee is quite impressive, but a thought did cross my mind and a lot of other people's minds.
Yes.
What do you make of the concern or the idea of robots taking over people's jobs?
We don't have much concern about robot replacing workers from what you said, because actually the biggest problem right now, again, for most small, medium business is they can't find the labor to fill the positions. And so actually companies are either downsizing, consolidating, or they're actually going out of business.
Statistics Canada says food and beverage servers had a post-pandemic increase in job vacancies of nearly 145% as of 2021. Still, what does this mean on the grander scale of labor, especially with AI and robotics amping up automation and shaving tasks usually done by humans? Where does this leave lower-skilled workers who often occupy these jobs? That's what I asked UBC economics professor Henry Sue, who says it's all part of how economies evolve.
I would argue that most people think that we are working as a society more now than we were, quote unquote, back in the day. So clearly, as machines replace humans at certain tasks, as humans, we're creative people. We come up with new tasks, new occupations, new jobs for people to do. That's kind of the very essence of economic progress. As our society becomes better off and workers are less likely to be willing to take these low-paying jobs, That's when businesses get creative in adopting machinery, adopting technology that can substitute for them.
Very nice, fragrant.
As far as what tea industry's human workforce looks like, there are support and maintenance workers overseeing and making sure the robot performs its best. And it's not without a frontline staff member in the store serving up desserts and tending to customer needs. Michael says there is a balance, but for now they're enthusiastic about how customers are reacting to toffee. This is some good bubble tea, Michael.
Hey.
Yes.
Thank you. You're welcome, Ali.
For the early edition, I'm Ali Patarga.
Cool robot. Humanless interaction. As a former server, on occasion, that wasn't always a bad thing.
No, I don't think so. But, don't say it too loud, because otherwise you might have Toffee here to talk with instead of me.
I don't want them to do that.
No. Well,
Toffee can mix the drinks. You do the forecast. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Toffee here dancing for you instead of me to talk.
We'll keep that on the Late Show.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. See you then.